What is the meaning of life? I've had a chance to kind of look at a number of different ways to lead a life that you could look back on in 50, 60 years and say, that was the life worth living. And I've done some research to see what the quote-unquote experts say. And it's interesting to hear the variety of answers. Some would say it's undefined. Some would say it's related to a calling. Some would say something very specific, and it might not apply to everyone. Another one I heard is life is suffering and meaning is suffering. I suppose everyone will have a different answer. But one that I feel can cover everyone's lives would be one of responsibility. If I were to put it into one word, the meaning of life is responsibility. Now, at the age of 32, I don't know everything, and that's just not possible. And therefore, I can only say what I've known so far up to this age. And when life seems to be running smoothly is when I've taken up some sort of responsibility. And when life has ever wavered or fallen apart or deviated from a life of congruency, it would be one where the life was mostly irresponsible. And I like summing it up into this one word of responsibility, because that will mean many things to many people. It is more personal to each person. So when they hear that, they can say, right now my life isn't perfect, but if I were more responsible, I would find more meaning. And that definition of responsibility will be different for everyone. But nonetheless, when one is trying to seek meaning, that one word could get them on track to find out what that means, what responsibility means to you or to me or to anyone. To know that answer, that's quite powerful. I've heard definitions around specific things like education or family or relationships or connection, and that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. Not everyone falls in those categories. Not everyone needs to pursue education to be leading a meaningful life. It could be another domain that fits for them. So I like this idea of a North Star, a compass forward that people can walk towards. Start with the walking, and step by step, you move towards that. To reach that North Star requires a level of responsibility. You can look at someone who has, well, they would define it as a meaningless life. They would say, my life feels meaningless right now. And you can look at that and you could say, what are you responsible for right now? What are you lifting on your shoulders? And it may often be the case that that person that's living in their definition a meaningless life, it could be that they're not defining responsibility. You see, a definition like we don't know what the meaning of life is, that definition is very challenging, because if we don't know what the meaning of life is, there's no reason to live. And then, everyone would be shriveling away. And I don't think that's an effective way. I don't think that's an optimistic way of looking at why you're here. The reality is, you are here. And if you're in your teens and you're not really sure, like you never actually had to be seriously responsible for anything, I would actually suggest that if you are in your teens, perhaps you are going through school, or you're looking to get a job, or you're looking to do something to progress your life. It is your responsibility to take on those tasks and say, look, I'm in school right now, and although I don't have adulthood responsibilities, I'm a teenager, and right now, grades are my responsibility. Doing the best I can in school. That is a meaningful pursuit. When you look at an item that you're taking on, an item of responsibility, I'm trying to get as personal as I can. You look at an item and you say, This is an item I'm going to become responsible for, an object, or what have you. This, as an example, would be grades. Would it be beneficial to your life if you achieved good grades? Is that a positive or a negative? It's a positive. It would be a worthwhile responsibility to take on. And when you get older, just so you know, in case your parents may have not said, your responsibilities will change. This is why the meaning of life is evolving under the realm of responsibilities. You're not always going to be striving for that A+ on your report card. You'll be needing to strive for an A+ in other areas of your life, such as financial, career, social connections, romantic relationships, family, all spiritual, all those different aspects you're looking at down the road, and you're trying to achieve an A+ on the ones that are deemed important to you. So you'll take on new responsibilities. Right now, romantic partner might not be important to you, so that might be something you look at down the road. It becomes a responsibility of yours several years later. Maybe right now it's academic achievement. And defining that responsibility, that's a scary endeavor. It is scary, no matter how you look at it. Because it's about growing up and looking at something and saying, I'm going to take that on. And to grow up is terrifying. And when you start having this cognitive ability to really look at what is the meaning of life, I asked this question when I was a teenager. I said, why am I here? Why am I seeing this consciousness as this individual? Why am I here? What's this whole point? I started to realize that the meaning of life became more and more important, as it does as you age. When you're a baby, nobody's asking those questions of you, and you're not asking those questions of yourself. And why is that? Well, one, you're taken care of. If you're a baby, you have no responsibility. Not that you can cognitively put into words, not yet at least. It would be ideal that you are a good baby, but that actually falls on the shoulders of the parents, and their responsibility could be to ensure that you turn out to be a good child. But considering you're a baby, well, the meaning of life isn't really as critical at that point. Much more critical for the parents. The level of responsibility falls entirely on the parents at that point. But as you get older, that question, the meaning, why you are here, that is what comes up. And if you keep asking yourself this question every single day, look at the level of responsibility you are upholding. Are you doing your laundry? Maybe become responsible for that. Are you cleaning your bedroom? Maybe become responsible for that. Are you getting good grades? No? Maybe it would be wise to start studying. Maybe it would be wise to be responsible for making your parents proud, or be responsible for getting good grades so you can get into school. In high school, I want to get into Harvard, so I need good grades. And if I didn't have good grades, I wouldn't get into Harvard, and I wouldn't have any chance of getting in anywhere. So I took the responsibility in my teenage years, and I said, school is important. I'm going to take this on as my responsibility. I'm going to do the assignments. I'm going to put the work in to do well in high school. And that will set me up for my adulthood. And even if adulthood falls apart, well, I can't look that far ahead, because at that point I was just a teenager. So I said, I'll take this on. But you see, not every teenager is maybe going to school. You could be in a third world country where school as a teenager maybe is not even possible. Maybe it's out of the realm, depending on where you live. Then maybe you need to create your own education, or to fend for yourself, or to thrive in the situation that you're given. But the minute you start taking on responsibility and you don't let it rest on someone else's shoulders, you make your life more meaningful. At the same time, you make everyone else's life around you easier. Easier to handle, easier to deal with. Because now, they're not looking after you so much. Now they have a chance to look at their own meaning, their own responsibilities, and handle those. And that's quite powerful. You see, it's like it's a spider web effect. It's like a network effect. If you've locked your life meaning down, then it trickles into everyone else's life. Makes everyone else's life better. Wouldn't you want that? Does that sound like a net positive? Makes your life better. It makes everyone around you better. Doesn't that seem worth living for? Like right now, maybe you're irresponsible. Do you realize what that's doing to your life right now? Do you realize what that's doing to the lives of the people that you care about? Do you know? We can tend to center in on something and make it so much about us when it actually isn't just about us. It's about everyone we come into contact with. Your responsibility can touch the lives of so many people. It's this groundswell effect. It starts with you, but it expands out to an infinite amount of people, organisms. And we're even including animals on this particular thought process. Your responsibility could touch the life of a pet. It could improve a dog or a cat that you're caring for, or a rescue animal. It could help so many people. Your responsibility could touch much more than just humans, but infinite organisms. And when I look at infinity, I look at not the here and now, not just the here and now, but countless generations ahead of you, legacies ahead of you. Your decision to be responsible for a child will affect that child's life, and then that child's life, due to your responsibility, will be positively impacted, and then that child will affect the next generation, and so on. There really is an infinite amount of people you could touch by just becoming responsible. Think about how powerful that sounds. Think about that. Now, when you do think about that, it's pretty hard not to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed with the sheer weight of this responsibility that you might be about to take on. But you see, your irresponsibility is a much greater weight. Your irresponsibility has much more detrimental impact. And even though it feels easy to just be irresponsible, it actually makes life and lives much more difficult. And although you look right now and you say, I'm only irresponsible right now, it has tremendous effect for years to come. So when you reflect on your life, you might look back and say, I was irresponsible. The thing is, there's not much you can really change. There's not much you can change about the past. Well, you can't really change anything about the past. And in a way, that could be quite freeing. Well, 20 years just went by. 30 years, 40 years. Oh well. Just say it to yourself. Oh well. Not much you could have done in the past. But your impact going forward is related to now and into the future. So now and into the future, what you do will make a difference. So at the very least, the weight of history can be lifted off of your shoulders. Oh well. Goodbye. That's it. Say goodbye to the history. Don't hold the weight of past irresponsibility, past issues, past traumas, past anything. You can let it go because you can't change that. On a positive note, you can change the now, and you can say, I'm responsible. I am responsible. This is why I feel that the meaning of life really does come down to the one word of responsibility, because those with better lives have decided to live a life of responsibility, and those with troubled lives, you can see it. You can see it, that they've chosen the opposite path. Just take a look at those who are suffering, those who are actually truly suffering. You see, the meaning of life being suffering, I think that's a dangerous way to look at it, and a negative look, because the people who are truly suffering are not living meaningful lives. They are literally suffering, and they want to get out of it. And it's and I'm talking about the dangerous suffering. You know, we're talking like the drug addicts, alcoholics, the people who are literally in a very deep bottom, and these are changeable circumstances for them, but they are suffering, and they could be suffering for the rest of their lives. That's not meaning. That's not meaning at all. That suffering needs to be fixed. And the only way you can solve the suffering is through just that one trickle of responsibility. And that becomes infectious. And that can start to percolate and grow in you. Something to think about. But I suppose everyone has their own ways of defining things, their own ways of saying, this is how to do this, this is how to do that, this is where to find meaning. But what about the people who aren't suffering at all? They're literally not suffering at all. And they're living a very content life. What do you say to them? Do you say that their meaning of life is suffering? When 50 years from now, they haven't suffered for many, many years. They've decided, I'm going to live a life of peace and responsibility and do you call that suffering? I just feel like that's not a positive way of looking at it. I suppose they put themselves into a situation where they voluntarily suffered, where they chose to suffer so that they could become much more, but they took on responsibility to give themselves that push, the initial hell, if you will, to get to the other side. So do you call that suffering? I don't know. I would maybe say that's a discipline approach. It's deciding. Discipline is kind of like suffering, if you will. But I'm looking at suffering from a different level. So, honestly, I think it's just fascinating that you could have multiple interpretations for the meaning of life. And everyone will have something different to them, but to really sum it all up, there's the overarching North Star. That North Star is only achievable or attainable through responsibility. I don't see any other effective way to look at the meaning of life, and one that actually gives you a sense of optimism, a sense of, I can do that, you know? If you're looking at it in terms of like men or women, like, isn't it a different meaning of life for either one? No. Even though women can have a child and men can't, biologically, that's like a physical dimension. That's nothing to do with that. In itself is kind of like a superficial look, but what you're actually looking at is responsibility for anyone and everyone. And if a woman decides, oh, I'm going to become a caregiver, or I'm going to be a child bearer and become a mom, which is a noble pursuit. In order to become a mom, there is a level of responsibility involved in order to be an effective mom. So I look at your role that you decide. So you decide, oh, I'm going to be a mom, I'm going to be an executive, I'm going to be this or that. That's just a role that you're playing in society. That's something for you to pass the time with, in a sense. But you need to look a level above that to actually feel like those steps are of value. That's why you look at responsibility as the top. Now, I just want to go back to the suffering people, the people who are truly suffering, and would suggest that it's their responsibility to ask for help and to reach out a hand. And that will provide tremendous relief, I could only imagine, for that individual. You can basically suffer in silence for the rest of your life and learn nothing of it, learn nothing from it. And nobody will ever bat an eye. That's a very powerful thing to realize, and a dangerous thing. And it feels kind of pessimistic to say, and kind of negative to say, but you have to understand that's what happens when you're coming from a place of suffering, is that you're alone. And that a life of responsibility, of taking that first step of responsibility, will bring you a much more inclusive state. A state where people will come together to rally around you because they will start to respect you. There's no one there for you when you choose the path of suffering. That's where everyone will disappear from you. So you want to escape that as quickly as you can, as effectively as you can. And that can only happen through the realization that responsibility is the way to go. I think I've thrown some tactics in here to help you navigate what responsibility means for you. But to be a little bit more tactical, you might just have to sit and really think this through. Think through what responsibility is for you. Really think through what that all means for you, because if you don't have anything to be responsible for, my personal belief is that you're living an aimless life. And that if you're a man or a woman, you are essentially this man-child or woman-child of being. And that someone else has to take care of you because you've decided that you don't have to be responsible. Not the right way of thinking. There are things that will come to you that you've never imagined before. Things you never thought you could achieve through responsibility. It's crazy what could happen. Doors will open for you positive thoughts and feelings will come rushing into you. And at first, as you become responsible, you might not feel like you're doing the right thing. And that is actually okay to know that you're stumbling and falling, and that's completely fine. If you know that, then you'll stumble along. Like someone on a bike with training wheels, and they've decided, I'm going to take the training wheels off. I'm going to have to balance, but the harder I pedal, the better my balance will get, and the further I'll go, and the less wobbly my tires will be. And that's quite powerful to think about that. This is why people give up when they've decided, I'm going to take on responsibility, and they give up too soon in whatever endeavor of responsibility they've chosen. Maybe they've started a business, or they've decided, I'm going to get into a relationship, and at first I don't really know this person, or I don't know what I'm doing in the business. It's wobbly, and then they give up too soon. They say, I don't want to be responsible for this, and they move on to something else. Maybe back to video games, or watching movies, or maybe another kind of addiction or something. They decide that that's just the pleasure pursuit's the way to go. So they never gave it a chance. And every time they tried to take up responsibility, they're in the wobbling path of the learning how to ride the bicycle. So they never get out of the wobbling path. They always are just kind of wobbling along. And they've given up too soon. But had they pedaled just a little further, they would have gone further. So best not to introduce yourself to a large responsibility right off the bat. To go right into the deep end, because you might drown and you might never come back up to the surface. And that's a very, very dangerous way of losing your life. To really tap into that life meaning requires more pedaling. Because the alternative is not so sweet. So I do want to conclude this and really kind of just emphasize that if things feel kind of meaningless, you might want to take up that first step. Kind of get that momentum going. And see where life takes you. It might take you to places you've never imagined before. And that is responsibility. That is the meaning of life.